The discovery that should have been impossible. The desert should have swallowed it. That's what Dr. Elias Warren kept telling himself as he brushed away the final layer of dust, revealing not stone, not clay, but something so out of place in the barren Syrian sands that his breath caught in his throat. It was metal. Not bronze, not iron, not even steel. Something far, far older and impossibly advanced. It shimmered with a faint bluish sheen, even though it had been buried for at least 4,000 years. At the center of the panel was a symbol Elias recognized instantly, even though he had only seen it once in a forbidden translation of the Epic of Sargon. A swirling sun flanked by two wings, the emblem of the long-lost Ašku Dominion, a civilization that should never have existed. A civilization that, according to every historian, was nothing more than a myth invented to scare early empires into obedience. But myths don't leave behind alloyed metallic surfaces thousands of years ahead of their time. As Elias leaned closer, the metal hummed. And then, even though no wind blew, the sand around him vibrated. A seam split open across the metal. A soft light bled out, and the voice that spoke from within was not ancient. It was American. If you hear this message, then history has failed. The ancient world is not what you think it was, and neither is ours. Elias staggered back as the chamber beneath the sand rumbled awake. The secret history of Earth, of humanity, of everything was about to break open. What if the ancient world had mastered technologies we still can't understand? What if the great civilizations we know, Egypt, Sumer, Greece, Rome, were only shadows cast by something far older, far stranger? And what if America today was unknowingly living inside the consequences of a war fought 5,000 years ago? Elias drew a shaky breath as the floor opened beneath him. This wasn't a dig site anymore. It was an invitation. An ancient one. The empire erased. The day had begun like any other at Tel Zaker, one of Syria's least glamorous ruins. The kind tour guides never mention, the kind no TV documentary ever swoons over. But Elias Warren wasn't a man who cared about tourist appeal. He was a man who chased anomalies, fragments that didn't fit, stories that had been carelessly discarded by the neat, polished version of history taught in schools. That's why he was here. The government had granted him a permit only because no one expected him to find anything significant. Tel Zaker had been excavated 3 times in the last century, and each excavation ended the same way, a disappointing scattering of pottery and foundations from a small Bronze Age village. But Elias had something the previous teams didn't: a manuscript. A very old manuscript. A manuscript that should not have existed. He found it 2 years ago, hidden inside a hollowed-out plank at a crumbling monastery north of Mosul. It was written in a language that resembled Akkadian, but flowed with a syntax closer to Navajo code. His colleagues said it was a forgery. His university threatened to revoke his tenure if he kept talking about it. But Elias didn't stop. Because some of the glyphs in the manuscript matched symbols carved into the oldest ruins in Peru. Others matched patterns found in the Mississippi Valley mounds that predated Cahokia. And once, deep in an obscure corner of the Smithsonian archives, he found a tablet fragment dredged from the Gulf of Mexico, bearing the exact same sigil: the swirling sun, the winged sphere, the emblem of the Ašku Dominion, a civilization that, according to the academic world, never existed, a civilization that, according to this manuscript, once ruled half the planet, not through conquest, but through knowledge. Knowledge that disappeared without a trace. Knowledge that should have remained buried. Until now. Elias knelt again by the exposed panel. His hands trembled as he wiped more sand away. The alloy was cool to the touch, impossibly cool for having been trapped beneath desert heat. He pressed lightly. The metal responded like living skin. A soft ripple spread across the surface. The seams split open. The humming stopped, replaced by silence. Not ordinary silence. A silence so deep, so absolute, it felt like sound itself had been erased from the world. Then the voice spoke again, and the silence shattered. "Dr. Elias Warren, we've been waiting for you." He froze. The voice knew his name. It shouldn't have known his name. And yet, here it was. The interior chamber was far larger than the small panel suggested, an impossible geometry of angles and arches, the kind of architecture no Bronze Age culture could have dreamed of building. He stepped inside, expecting dust, rot, decay. Instead, the air smelled clean, sterile, almost electric. He reached for his flashlight, but the chamber lit up on its own, responding not to movement, but to intention. Wherever he glanced, soft white light followed. "Okay," he whispered to himself, "this can't be real." But the chamber disagreed. A slow pulse of pale blue rippled across the ceiling, illuminating a dome carved with glyphs he didn't recognize. Glyphs that felt ancient, alien, and impossibly familiar all at once. Their shapes curled like vines, spiraled like galaxies, looped like DNA helixes frozen in stone. No ancient civilization he knew, Sumerian, Akkadian, Hittite, carved anything remotely like this. This wasn't archaeology. This was intrusion. He stepped forward. A raised platform dominated the center of the room, smooth, seamless, shimmering like a sheet of moonlit water, even though it was solid. He brushed a hand across its surface. Nothing happened. Instead, the voice returned, calmer, quieter, almost empathetic. "Dr. Warren, you have questions. You must, because we had them too." Elias' heart hammered in his chest. "Who are you? Where are you? How do you know my name?" The ceiling dimmed, not threateningly, more like a sigh. "We are the Ašku, or once were. And we left this record for you, because you were the first to look for answers in places the rest of your world dismissed." Elias swallowed hard. He should have felt terrified. Instead, he felt exactly what he felt the first time he looked at the manuscript 2 years ago. A pull, a calling, as if something buried deep in humanity's bones had been waiting for this moment. He stepped further in. The door behind him slid closed. He didn't panic, though he knew he should. He raised his voice. "This, whatever this is, was made at least 4,000 years ago, Bronze Age, early Empire period. That should be impossible." A soft, almost rueful sound vibrated through the chamber. "Your world measures its history by survival of evidence, not by survival of truth." The platform in the center flickered. A holographic projection formed, ancient landscapes stitching themselves together in glowing fragments. A coastline Elias didn't recognize. A massive circular harbor. Structures taller than anything until the Industrial Revolution. And at the center, a city of white stone and mirrored metal, rising like a dream carved into reality. Elias whispered, "That looks Mediterranean, but not." The projection zoomed out. The city was located on a landmass that did not exist on any modern map. A triangular-shaped island off the coast of present-day Lebanon, where the sea was now over a mile deep. The voice spoke, gently.
"This was Ašku, the first city, the forgotten empire, the civilization erased." Elias stared at the impossible geography. "But why erase it?" he asked. Why would anyone erase something this monumental? The light dimmed into a somber shade of violet. Because knowledge can elevate civilization, or unmake it. The map no eyes should have seen. Elias approached the floating projection. It brightened, sharpening into finer detail. Streets, aqueducts, towers shaped like inverted spires. The city stretched outward in concentric rings, linked by bridges. A design he had seen somewhere. Yes, it hit him like a blow. Plato's Atlantis. But this was older, much older. The architecture matched nothing from classical Greece, no Hellenic symmetry, no Socratic-era geometries. This predated Greece by 2,000 years, and Plato claimed Atlantis existed 9,000 years before his time. His pulse spiked. This wasn't Atlantis. Atlantis was Ašku. Or at least, Atlantis was a shadow of a memory of what Ašku once was. He reached toward the projection instinctively, and the image responded by expanding into a rotating globe. The Earth, but not Earth as he knew it. Different coastlines, different sea levels, different climates. The globe's oceans were lower, maybe 200 meters lower. Entire archipelagos existed that had since vanished beneath the sea. Elias watched as symbols appeared over various points on the map, identical swirling sun emblems. One in the Levant, one off the coast of Crete, one in the Gulf of Mexico, one near the Mississippi River basin, one in the Andes foothills, one beneath the Gobi Desert. He froze. These were the exact places where he had seen the sigil appear in artifacts scattered across the world. "This isn't possible," he murmured. "It is not only possible. It happened." The map shifted through time, ice sheets receding, seas rising, deserts forming, civilizations emerging. Sumer, Egypt, Harappa, Old Kingdom China, each one flickering like match sparks in the vastness of time. Then the projection halted on a single date, 2102 BCE, a year that held no significance in any known historical framework. But for the Ašku, it was the end. The voice broke the silence. This was the collapse, not by war, not by plague, but by something worse, a misunderstanding. Of what? The light shifted to deep red. Of energy. The chamber shook, subtly, like the memory of an earthquake echoing through the architecture. Elias gripped the edge of the platform. If your civilization mastered advanced energy, more advanced than anything we know, how did it all vanish? The voice hesitated, this time not for dramatic effect, for pain. Because we used knowledge we did not fully understand, and the earth itself paid the price. Images flashed across the projection, cities crumbling, coastlines collapsing, waves swallowing continents. Elias's breath caught. A global catastrophe? A global reset. He shook his head. Then how did any of you survive? That is why this chamber exists, because we made a choice. What choice? The lights dimmed. To disappear. The Pact of the Last Engineers. The projection collapsed into a single symbol, the swirling sun, burning red. Elias stared at it, feeling a pressure in his chest he couldn't explain. It wasn't fear, it was recognition, as if something in him already knew this story long before he stepped into the chamber. The voice continued. The energy we used was not supernatural. It was not divine. It was not alien. It was physics, on a scale your world has not yet reached. Elias frowned. Fusion? 0 point? Quantum field? Beyond names, beyond your mathematics, but not beyond your future. And that is why you are here. Elias blinked slowly. Me? Yes, Dr. Warren, because your world is approaching the same threshold. The chamber hummed. The projection flared. Images of modern America appeared. Satellites, power grids, nuclear reactors, quantum laboratories. Elias staggered back. This isn't real. This is too detailed, too specific. Because it is not prophecy, it is causation. And then, the chamber lights dimmed. A hatch opened in the far wall. Inside it was a cylindrical container, metallic, strange, shimmering with the same bluish iridescence as the chamber itself. And at the center of it was a crystal-like sphere that pulsed slowly, like a sleeping heartbeat. Elias stepped closer, instinct pulling him forward. What is that? The voice answered softly, almost sadly. Hope, or ruin, depending on who uses it. Elias felt his pulse race. He realized something terrible, something exhilarating. This chamber wasn't a tomb. It was a choice, a warning, a test. And he was now part of it.